Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming and taking the time to come to the spring safety meeting this morning. Just kind of a couple things today. We have Heidi here, our photographer, so all the full-time people will be getting their pictures taken. If you don't have your blue shirt, I do have a couple blue shirts in a box by the table over there. So just watch as the meeting's going on and making sure that you go and get your picture taken. Just a couple things with the packet that you got. If you look on the first page, you will, if you have any speeding tickets, parking tickets, things like that, feel free to write them down. And then if you don't have anything, just make a circle with a line through it. And then make sure you print your name and then sign and date it. Today is the 24th. We're gonna first be going through a couple topics that are like your basic right to know, hazard communication, things like that, that subcontractors, and then there's farmers that are here today. If you're now pulling any of our 24-ton trailers or getting in any of our trucks, we're required that you be here for that portion of it. So I'll let you know, it should only take about a half hour, 45 minutes, and then I'll let you guys know when you can feel free to take off from there. So any of you that have a pre-employment drug test this morning after the meeting, if you haven't already gotten your kit, they're sitting over on the table, so go and grab that. I have that scheduled right around 10:30, so it happens, we should hopefully be done by then, but if you're seeing the time is getting close, by 10:15, just feel free to take off. And then we'll take a little bit of a break in about half hour, 45 minutes, and you guys can grab some breakfast. All right, just to start off, today we're going to be, again, talking about hazard communication, letting you know about our AWARE program, and kind of going over some other topics. Just a basic right to know has to do with hazardous chemicals, just kind of your job and overall safety of the company. With the hazard communication portion of it, looking at the hazards, reading the labels, looking at an SDS. Do all of you guys know where our current SDSs are held or stored at, if you ever need to look at them? Yep, they're now behind Jackson's office on his shelf, unless he's moved them. But they should be back there if you were to ever need them. If a customer happened to, want to look at them or read something on it, that would be where they're at. So if you have any questions on that, just let me know. Everybody's required to take this portion of the training. You are required to be able to read labels and SDSs as a part of this, follow instructions, and be able to identify hazards if needed. There's 3 parts to this program, the training, be able to read the labeling, and then reading the SDS portion of it. We're going to be able to go over the physical hazards and the health hazards of it. Pretty much basic common sense. Know what you're working with. Be aware of it. You guys all have worked with it probably in the past. If you haven't and you have questions, please ask your fellow coworkers or come talk to Jackson or an agronomist if there's any questions or concerns with that. So 5 main categories. Health hazards come in a toxic, corrosive, carcinogenic, reproductive, and substance. So as we're going through this too, there's a quiz that if you keep kind of flipping through, I have them in order. Just feel free to answer and we'll kind of go through them as we are going through the topics. So, routes of entry or exposure, inhalation comes into play, going into the lungs, going directly into the bloodstream. If you need a respirator, There is some here. There is respirators too if you're working with anhydrous in the storage shed out there and up in Villard as well. Absorption of the body, making sure you're wearing your gloves, proper shoes, long sleeves, goggles if needed. And you can also inhale it, so making sure, again, you're not mixing chemicals and then going and eating a sandwich without washing your hands, things like that. Health hazards, it can cause cancer, be toxic, get on your skin, into your organs, be corrosive, if you have allergies. Health hazards, explosive, flammable, unstable, water reactive. With these, you need to be trained, as all of you guys are here, so you have been trained. You're storing them properly, making sure, again, you're reading the labels. Alright, so that was the first page, or the first topic of that. So, question 1, what's the answer, everybody? Should it be done annually? What does SDS stand for? And I didn't touch on this, but there is 16 different sections in the safety data sheet. And what are 2 health hazard categories? Good job.
You want to say that again?
Toxic and corrosive.
Read the screen. So
Oh, sorry.
Read the screen. No, you're not in the way. It's just saying.
We just can't see it. You can't even see it. It's too faded.
Right.
It doesn't matter as long as you tell us what's up.
I can't brighten it, so we'll just kind of go over it if you have questions.
But I kind of become a count. Number 4. Any answers?
That's it, guys.
Turn the sun down a little bit. Yeah.
Alright, so the next one has to do with the worker protection standard. It's regulated by the EPA, covers all agriculture workers, pesticide handlers, anybody working on farm, forestry or nursery, anybody engaged in any agriculture production. You must be provided training annually. Anybody who has not been trained the last 12 months isn't allowed to handle them. Must be trained to enter. Again, the EPA is regulating that, and you must be, again, performed before you can handle the task. So all of the pesticide handlers, including self-employed person, agriculture, commercial, you must be 18 to do it. Anybody that makes loads or applies pesticides, again, and mechanics too, if you're into that category. You guys all know what pesticides are. You work with them on a daily basis. Making sure you just know the risks and are staying cautious. Just because you work with them on a daily basis doesn't mean that you start to slack on things or are starting to shorten by not wearing your gloves or your goggles. Again, they can enter the body 4 different ways: absorption, injection, inhalation, and indigestion. Making sure when you're mixing and loading that you're reading the labels, have proper ventilation, and if you have any questions, making sure that you're talking with the Tom and Chem Shed or your agronomist if you have questions. Making sure that you're wearing all your PPE, and then if there's any re-entry information, if you need to, making sure everybody knows that you just sprayed, not to be going in and walking in the field right away. Again, if you happen to get exposed, there's eye washes in both the chem shed and here in the shop. If you're the farmer side of things, you should be carrying at least a gallon jug with you in a truck or in your sprayer on the trailer, being able to wash out your eyes if need be. The PPE is on the pesticide label, taking extra precautions, not wearing like short sleeves, you're having your goggles and your gloves on. Making sure you're wearing proper gear is the biggest thing. Reading the labels, making sure you're not crossing something that might be reactive. Everybody know what the label means on the products. Blue is health, red is flammability, yellow is reactivity, and white is other hazards. And they're just the numbered depending on the level of cautiousness. Again, safety data sheets are located behind Jackson's desk if you're in need of them or if somebody's asking for them. There's 16 sections. So we can kind of go over the quiz here. Does a worker protection standard apply to someone who is unloading open containers into a customer's pickup truck? Yes or no?
Yes.
Number 2, which of the following does it apply to? What agency enforces worker protection? Why does product labeling override the worker protection standard? I didn't mention this. Label is the law. So if you have any questions, read the label. That's what the law is. Where can you find rules for safe use mixing? That would be where? The label. Yeah. And what does the skull and crossbones mean on a pesticide label?
What's it mean?
Poison. What? That's a good one. Right there.
What's that?
Make the run.
Yeah, that's right.
So the next couple pages or this packet that's in here have to do with if we were to ever have a spill, just kind of the basics that you need to know on it, what it all entails. If you have questions, I'm not going to sit and read through it. Feel free to, here's the packet, read through it, and then on the back page is where you would sign. So. I just have to give that to you so that you're aware of what goes on. If you have any questions with that, the first person in an instance would be calling Jackson or Eric on that, and then they would know the proper procedures on how to handle it with the state and so forth. If you happen to be any subcontractors here, if you happen to have an issue with applying our product, that would be again the same instance, making sure that we get a phone call and that we would handle that. One thing other to touch on around here is overhead power lines. Making sure that you're locating all the power lines when you're pulling into fields. That has to do with sprayers, you know, you're unfolding, backing in to approaches if so, with your augers. Making sure that you're even looking like for on your irrigator stuff, that you are being very cautious. So what do you do if a person becomes energized by power lines? Does anybody know? So you stay away from them, obviously, making sure you call 911, and then they will contact the correct person. If you happen to hit one with a sprayer or some kind of equipment, stay in the vehicle. If it is on fire, you would jump out with your arms crossed, your feet together, and do not let your feet miss contact with the ground. You have to shuffle. Make sure you're staying, try and get as far away as possible. If you happen to still be questioning where, if you're still energized, maybe you got energized from the vehicle, don't move, just stay on the ground and just stay in that position until somebody comes to help you, 911 or just kind of a good reminder to just be looking up, being cautious of what's around you. Same with like tree lines, things like that. Making sure you're kind of making your plan on applicating and then keeping a safe distance and being able to be watching what you're doing. Guys that are, farmers that are in your field all the time, you might start to get a little, safe and not be as cautious, making sure you're watching your irrigators. Alright, so that is it for the farmers, or the subcontractor guys. If you are good to go, thank you for your time. And just feel free to leave them on the table. Yeah, or you can send them there. That doesn't matter. So. Yes, Jessica's making copies of those. So, is she back?
Yeah, right.
I will go over the Alright. So just a quick touch note, your ERG or your Orange Emergency Response Guidebooks on the hazmat side of things, making sure that you have one, that if you decide to jump in a truck or do anything with anhydrous this spring, that you have those. Just kind of another reminder, making sure that you have everything in your truck. So you are responsible as a driver to make sure you have all the required things that are needed. So making sure you obviously have your current CDL and health card. You have your 3 reflective triangles, spare fuses, fire extinguisher. They now making sure your DOT sticker date is up to par. The shop is really good about making sure those get in, but sometimes a few slip by here and there, so making sure that is current. You don't need to have the inspection document there. It's either their sticker or the inspection form. So just one. Pre-trip comes into play, making sure that you have your pre-trips done, and you also are required to have your inspections from the day before in your trucks with you. Making shipping papers are correct. Your hazmat registration, those are coming due in June, so just be on the kind of front end of that. Those will be updated in June. And then again, your registration docs for your vehicles and your insurance cards. Does anybody have any questions with that? If you happen to get pulled over and you don't have your updated insurance card, I'm not going to be happy. Because you have been given many, many times of it's laying here, it's laying over there, making sure you're responsible for your driving. Driving safety, just a couple things, making sure you're wearing your seatbelts, your traffic laws, you're strapping down your loads correctly. If the vehicle is having some kind of issue or you're questioning something, making sure you're talking to the shop maintenance on side of things. If you happen to get pulled over for not wearing your seatbelt, or you're on your phone, or you're speeding, the co-op's not paying for that ticket. That's on you. So again, cell phones, if you don't have a headset coming into spring, let us know and we can get you one ordered. Again, if you're caught being on your phone while driving, we're not paying for it, for the ticket. And then just making sure you're not taking shortcuts. You know, spring gets busy. Everybody's a little on edge or a little stressed, making sure that you just take the time to be precautious and not taking any shortcuts. Just a few things with ladders we have to cover, making sure you're using them properly. You're supposed to have somebody below you if you're up on them. If OSHA walks in and you're dangling off a ladder on top of a 55-gallon drum, things like that, don't do that. General common sense. Same with lifting, making sure you're not lifting too heavy of things, using a dolly if you needed, forklift. Then we're going to go into the bloodborne pathogens. making sure that if you were to get cut, so it happens to be that it's transmitted through contact of blood, obviously, or other bodily fluids. If you do happen to get cut, making sure that you clean it up properly, wearing your gloves. If somebody else has to help you, they have gloves on, flushing your mouth, and then making sure you report it so that we can have it reported in our documentation. If you were to get or have blood save or spill, making sure it's cleaned up properly, bleach is put on it. We're letting it sit for a while, and then making sure you have gloves when you're disposing of it. So that test for the bloodborne pathogens quiz, what should you do if you see a surface contaminated with blood? Clean it up, report it. I should minimize my exposure of bloodborne pathogens by not wearing gloves. Yes or no? If you're exposed to potentially infectious material at work, what should you do? Report it. Some general security topics is just watching and making sure there's not random people walking around. If you happen to see somebody that's suspicious, go and see what they're doing. Ask for their name. Do not give out any company information. And at the end of the night, if you happen to be the last person, say in the shop here, making sure lights are off, alarms are set, doors are locked is a huge thing. So, quiz again. If you see an unauthorized person, what should you do? I should give out company information if they ask me. What are some things to do when you check if you're the last person to leave? And what should you do if you return to work and you've seen signs of break-in? What should we do?
Call 911.
Contact your supervisor, Eric, and then call 911 if he suggests that, or if it's necessary. Just a kind of quick touch on contractors. We have like millwright people coming in, subcontractors are here. They are required to know all of our safety programs at all locations and making sure that they're performing tasks correctly. If you see that they're performing a task unsafe, you need to report it. So again, why is it important on your quiz to stay safe? And what should you do if you see a contractor perform an unsafe act? Report it. The next one is, we had already kind of touched base on this, PPE. We can kind of go through the quiz. Where can you find information about what PPE you should wear? The label. Yep, and the SDS, correct. If you cannot find any PPE that you're required to on site, yeah.
What did you say for the first one?
The label or the SDS.
Okay.
If you cannot find proper PPE, you should talk to your supervisor. You can come talk to me. We can get something ordered. I think we're covered on almost everything at the moment. But if you need something, just let us know. And what are some examples of PPE?
Gloves, boots.
Gloves, long-sleeve shirts, goggles. All right, we're going to cover lockout, tagout. That has to do with, it might be a contractor that comes in that needs to lockout, tagout, or in-house here. If the auger gets jammed in the fertilizer plant, things like that, what should you do? You need to be an authorized employee and be trained to do that.
Do we have any of those?
Yes. So Brandon Relke is the only one here right now that is trained to do that. We had Eric Bowen and Donnie we're looking this spring before we start to get more people on board, and I can let you guys know who those are. So with lockout tagout comes in to be the authorized person. So they would be the main guy going to be trained to be able to go and then work on that. So they need to be notified, and then there's affected people. So who might be around there? Say you have a guy in the skid loader, he would need to put the second lock on. And then if there's anybody else, say Jessica in the office, she's aware that the guys are going out there to work on stuff, she would then put her lock on. And the only way that that is able to follow is to go back into steps. So then she would remove her lock, the skid loader guy would remove his lock, and then Brandon would remove his lock in that order. Does that make sense? And the only person that can remove that lock is that person who hooked it on there, again, as I stated. All right. So, what are the 3 levels of training for lockout takeout, or the persons that would be affected? So, A would be authorized. B would be the affected person. And then C would be other or office personnel if needed, depending on the situation. What is the purpose of using lockout takeout? Safety. Yeah. Which situation requires lockout? What do you guys think? B. Yep. Taking off the guard and clear your jam. The purpose of using a tag with a lock is to know who works on it. True or false? True. There's that tag that comes with the lock, that you know who locked it up. I think I... So this is an example, you have the lock and you have the tag, so that you would know who has that lock on there. Alright, permit required confined space. So it's a space, we have a couple of them around here, so it'd be truck hoppers, to our bulk bin storage, to, I think they consider the scale, not the scale, the bins in the tower, confined space as well. So there's a couple of them around here. They're not used or intended for people to be in there, working in there full time. If you are not a part of, say they do lockout tagout, and then they're going to be in the confined space, you would need to have, again, there's 3 people. So you have an entrant, you have an attendant watching, and you have your supervisor. So Jackson would be required to be there to watch that be happening, and then he needs to sign off on that. And you need to be authorized. So there is another set of training that comes into play with that. Generally, we've probably hired that out, but if you happen to be a truck, in a truck for a hopper, you guys might do that on a normal basis, hopefully not. We'll have to have another training on that, but we're not due for it yet, so if you are new, we can get that done too, yes.
A tender truck, is that going?
They require it, yeah, a tender truck hopper. Yeah. All right, and then once those steps have been completed, making sure that they have to fill out a permit with that to have everybody sign off on, and that needs to be filed with me. So again, I kind of have it on the quiz. If you're not a part of that confined space or that lockout tagout, it comes into play with both of them, and you're a shop guy per se, like they're working, don't be a distraction for them. They need to focus in making sure everybody stays safe. That comes with question 2. So who may enter a permit required confined space? An authorized employee. So if you haven't been trained on that, we will have other documentation that comes into play for you. 2, we just answered that with distraction. If a contractor comes to a facility once a month to check equipment for only 5 minutes in each space, does the contractor have to fill out entry permits?
Yes.
Yes?
D.
Is it C or D?
D.
Correct. D. Who must be named on the permit?
Tim Carlson.
So you have your entrant, you have your attendant,
Attendant entry.
and then your supervisor. And then what should be done with the permit after completion?
Folded and filed carefully.
Yes, file me. Correct. Shelley. Is the food done? Alright. So the next one is electrical.
Morgan, you had a question?
Yeah.
Who must be named on the first one?
Entrant, attendant, and supervisor. Alright, so now we're going to go over the electrical portion. We hire out most of our electrical work, but there is some things that come into play around here with generic general safety. So we can kind of just go over the quiz and talk about it. Making sure, extension cords is a huge one. Making sure that they aren't, you can't really see the picture, but they're not ripped on the ends. If they are, making sure they're repaired or they're thrown away.
We can actually repair them now?
Certain size, not
Certain size?
certain size, not compared to others and throw.
I don't, do you know what the size is?
No, I don't, but I remember Glenn saying that.
Yeah. So we'll just kind of go through the quiz. So what type of electrical work you're performed to do would be like handling electrical cords, plugging generic equipment in, things like that. If there's any questions or concerns, talk to your supervisor. We can get a certified electrician on it. Everybody knows what the third prong on electrical cord is?
Extra.
The ground. Can this third prong be removed?
With the side cutter, yes.
No.
Can't be.
No.
I've done it before, you can't say no.
I don't want to
It
go
can
there.
be removed, should you know?
Electrical hazards. What do you guys think?
All the above.
Correct. And what are some examples of temporary wiring? Electrical cords. Is there anything else that you guys can think of that you would be messing with electrical stuff on?
Don't use a hair dryer while taking a shower.
Yes. Okay.
Never iron while you're making.
Fire prevention, I'm not really going to touch a lot on this. We have a lot of volunteer firemen in this room. You guys know way more than I do, or ever will. Our fire extinguisher guys here today, certifying those, making sure you know where they're located. And then,
Sorry, one side note on that. If you brought in your fire extinguisher and it does not have a green zip tie type thing on it, don't take it yet. He needs to come back and do something with it. So take a different one and we'll change it out later. So if you brought one off your propane truck, off your whatever truck, and there's no green zip tie, don't take it.
so making sure you have fire extinguishers, and then hot work comes into play as well. So welding, anything that creates a spark is generally is considered hot work. So when you're doing hot work, making sure that you know what's a fire hazard around you, you're paying attention. Preventative maintenance, we'll touch on that in a little bit. Making sure that you're being cautious of what is around you again, so that you prevent or control extinction or fires in general. If conditions cannot be met, hot work is not allowed. Hot work permits are supposed to be filled out if they're performed outside of the designated hot work area. We haven't had a designated hot work area yet. I'm guessing that we'll designate it as the shop and then outside of the shop. and we can touch base with that too. Something that we need to handle. So, for the questionnaire, what are some of the major fire hazards at your facility? At any of the facilities? Fuel. Any more? What document provides specific instructions for safe
Now what is sage handling?
safe handling and use of flammable or combustible chemicals? Your SPFs again. Does good housekeeping reduce fire hazards?
Yes.
What is hot work? Anything that creates a spark. Or potentially could create a spark. And what is the purpose of completing a hot work program? C. Help identify safe practices to reduce the risk of failure and ensure these practices are implemented. Alright, preventative maintenance. Most of the shop guys take care of this, or you bring it in to a third party. But there is things that come into play, making sure you have your scheduled oil changes, your responsibility for that. You're looking at hoses, hydrant tanks, kind of stickers. There's a lot of cost that can come into play. With our egg side, you can reduce breakdowns as much as possible, preventing accidents, safety, kind of like a smooth operating as much as possible. Obviously things happen out of your control, but we do the best that we can. It prevents less cost down the road when your machine is being able to consistently be running. You're obviously making money at that point. When it's broke down, you're not, and it's costing money in the long run. So making sure your pre-trip inspections are being done and you're filling out the proper paperwork. If you have questions about preventative maintenance, the manual is going to be the place to go if you have questions or being able to talk to our maintenance shop. So number one, why is it important to have maintenance on equipment? Number two, correct. And where can you find a preventative maintenance procedure if you have questions? And all preventative maintenance records are kept on file. So if you have questions or concerned about something or when something was last done, you'll be able to answer those questions. I have those. If you have questions, I think Brandon might have a set of some things too that he does personally, but other than that, if diesel or anything else gets done, it's with me. And then we just need to touch base on our emergency plan here at the co-op. So that has to do with weather, tornado, anything with rain, tornadoes, things like that. If there happens to be an emergency, or there's something major that happens, say somebody, again, like you probably all have heard, Isaac's situation that happened at the fertilizer plant, making sure that we're reporting that to the GM. Where do we go if there's severe weather around here? Would be the egg office. Secondary would be on the west side if it happens to be some kind of emergency, or say like the fertilizer tower is coming down, or whatever the case might be. You would go over to the Andersons on the other side of the road on the grain, by the grain bin here. Same with vice versa, if you're over at the main office, the break room is considered the emergency weather spot. I don't know why. Does anybody know why? What is there? There's food there? Yeah. If you have an emergency, does everybody know where first aid kits are located? The main office, they're in the break room. There's also one in the bathroom here. And there's one in the bathroom in the egg office as well. I think the chem shed, it's in the bathroom too, in the closet. And if you happen to have a farmer here and there's an emergency that happens, making sure you're taking them to the designated space. That is the location of that. If there happens to be any other emergency that happens, making sure that you guys are going directly to the meeting place that you were designed to go to is another huge one. And that comes into play too with like general security as well, making sure you're not, sitting and walking around, that you're going to your. And then just wanted to touch base on our safety committee that we now have. So we meet once a month. It's me, Andy, Dean, and Brandon, and Eric. And then Glenn was in on that too. He's not here. So we meet once a month, kind of we'll be going through walkthroughs, discussing reporting, going through different, if there's any questions or requests that we have, we would have those discussions. If there's any accidents that happen or work comp claims, we'd be going through those and looking at how they happened and making those discussions and how we prevent them next time. So there'll be breakfast in the break room. It should be ready to go. Thank you for your time today, and then just feel free to leave those documents on the table. So again, like why it was me, our safety instructor Glenn just up and disappeared pretty much. So you guys got stuck listening.
That's okay, because it got down at least an hour.
Morgan, now we have all the questions.
Okay, yeah, questions. I know that answer. If you haven't got your picture taken yet, making sure that you get your picture taken. With your blue shirts.
So guys, hey, quick minute here. So I do want to take some time, honestly, to recognize Morgan. So the amount of effort and time that she put in the last 10 days, honestly, she got thrown into the fire. She just gave a little background to our safety and compliance officer. Retired from his company unannounced on the last Monday. So when you look at the amount of paperwork and training that we just went through, Morgan did that in a matter of 10 days, which is honestly pretty impressive. So I do want to recognize her. Thank you. Next, I want to say thank you, honestly, to all of our first responders, firefighters that we have. I know we have a lot of them a part of our company and a part of our community. You guys had a busy day yesterday. I'm sure that's weighing on you today, probably a little tired. I do want to take some time to say thank you for being a part of our community and being in that course of action. I know those jobs aren't for everybody, and they're probably some of the most thankless jobs that honestly you guys are all a part of. So thank you to all the first responders and firefighters, emergency personnel, and last thing I want to say before we have some breakfast is really when you think about safety, it's really easy to overlook it. Everybody naturally says goes first. And I'll be the first to admit that when you get stressed out and things get busy, it's probably the last thing that you think about. But really at the end of the day, if you take anything away from this morning, it's when you look around the room, this is the crew, the same crew that we want to come to work every day, and the same crew that we want to go home every day. I tell everybody that I've never in my career had to be the person that goes to any of their spouses, family members to say, Gene's not coming home tonight. And I hope in my career I never have that conversation. So at the end of the day, all of the reasons, I used to think I was invincible and could do anything, but please remember the reasons why you come to work every day. Whether it be your spouse, your wife, your kids, your hobbies, the ability to go camping in the summer, all of those things that why you come to work, earn a paycheck every day, that please have that in the back of your mind, because it's not you who suffers if an accident happens. It's all those that care as well do around you, including everybody in this room, the family and hobbies and the pets that you have at home. So if you do take anything away from today, just always have that in the back of your head. With that, we appreciate everybody coming. We're planning to have a little little bash here this evening, play some bean bags, have a supper, have a little get together before the busy season does start. Obviously, it doesn't look like it's going to start for a while when you walk outside, but it'll be here before we know it. That this co-op, this business won't get done without the people in this room. So thank you to everybody and help yourself for breakfast.
Thank you, Eric.